You called me ordinary, in my own kitchen, while I was making your lunch.
Sarafina, I didn't mean.
You meant exactly what you said. The problem is you have no idea who you said it to.
The city was still dark. Sol had not woken up yet. Serafina stood at her desk. Black pantsuit, hair pulled back, no makeup. Chairman Lee did not need armor today. She needed clarity. Mr. Park placed a black folder on the desk. Chairman, the full beneficial ownership file. 6 in the morning, as requested. She opened it. Flipped past Cayman Islands, past Hana Capital, past 3 shell companies. The last page. A name. She read it once, then again. Board member Kang Min-ho. Her thumb pressed the paper. Once. Like she could erase him. Appointed by her, 7 years ago. CFO to board member. He sat 3 seats from her every quarter. He brought her green tea when she was tired. He called her Chairman Nim with the same voice he used to call his daughter Agia. He had been selling her for 3 years. Serafina closed the folder, said nothing for 10 seconds. Activate Protocol Azure, she said. Full scope. Every company, every filing, every name. A pause. And have legal pull board member Kong's office access. Effective now. Mr. Park bowed. Yes, Chairman. The door closed. Welcome to K, a mafia romance stories, where the women are powerful and the truth always wins. Subscribe. You are exactly where you need to be. Serafina looked at the Han River. The sun was starting to hit it. She had trusted Kang Min-ho with the specific trust you extend to someone who has been in your corner before your corner was worth being in. He had voted for her governance restructure in year 1, when 4 other board members had abstained. He had defended her Osaka acquisition when 3 senior executives called it reckless. He had been in her boardroom for 7 years, and she had read his loyalty as loyalty because she was precise about most things, and she had been wrong about this one specific thing in a way that cost her 3 years of exposure she had not known she was carrying. She did not allow herself to feel that yet. There was no room for it this morning. She opened her laptop. The 42nd floor was quiet around her. The city outside was pale gray and beginning to turn. She had 4 hours before the filing window opened, and 4 hours was enough if every minute of it was used correctly. She called Seo Jun-hyuk. He answered on the first ring. He had been awake. She could hear Seoul through his window. The same city from a different building, the same pale gray morning gathering outside his glass. I have the name, she said. Tell me. Kang Min-ho, senior board member, my appointment. He has been the pipeline between my boardroom and Choi Kyung-won for 3 years. He had access to every acquisition timeline, every governance review, every board decision before it was public. He was the blueprint. She looked at the river. He is also why they chose Daniel. He knew I loved him. He watched me for 7 years, and he knew. A silence on Seo's end, the specific silence of a man absorbing the full size of what he has just been told. Is the documentation clean? The beneficial ownership trace is 417 pages, 14 signatures, 3 offshore entities, all roads leading back to one name at the bottom. She paused. It is clean. It is complete. It is uncontestable. Then we file today. Not Friday. Today. That is exactly what I was going to say. Another pause. Something shifted in the specific quality of the silence between them. 2 people who have been operating in parallel toward the same conclusion and have just arrived at it at the same moment from opposite directions. 9 in the morning. All 4 companies simultaneously. I will call the other 2 now. Tell them sealed preparation from this point. No board notifications. No governance committee routing. Nothing goes through any internal channel that existed before 6 o'clock this morning. Understood. A brief pause. Sarafina si. She waited. She looked at the Han River, catching the first real light of the morning. Thank you, Chairman Seo. 9 o'clock. She hung up. She called Ji-hai. Jihai answered before the second ring. She was already awake. She had been waiting for something. Not this specifically, but something. 6 years of knowing Serafina had taught Jihi to stay awake on the nights when the city felt like it was holding its breath. Fia, Jihai said. She'd called her that since university. Kang Minho, Serafina said. A silence on the line. 2 full seconds. For Jihai, who processed everything at speed, 2 full seconds was the equivalent of a gasp. Minho si, Jihi said. Not a question. The flat, precise tone of someone reorganizing everything they thought they knew about a situation around a single new fact. I trusted him. I was wrong. Jihai was quiet for a moment. Fee, she said, you did not create this. You did not invite this. You ran your company with complete precision, and someone who was supposed to be on your side decided to profit from your proximity. Her voice was steady and certain in the way that Jihai's voice was always steady and certain when she was saying something she had already decided was true and was not open to negotiation. That is not your failure of judgment. That is his failure of character. Those are not the same thing. Serafina said nothing. Are you filing today? 9 in the morning. Then I will be at the tower at 7:50. A pause. With 2 Americanos and 0 conversation until you need it. Jihi? Thank you. Jihai made the sound she made when gratitude was unnecessary, but she was going to receive it gracefully anyway. Then she said, go back to the desk, Fia. The city needs you on the 42nd floor this morning. And hung up. Serafina went back to the desk. She worked. For 2.5 hours, she worked with the specific, complete focus of a woman who has been building toward a single moment for 6 weeks and can see it clearly enough now to execute without hesitation. She reviewed the 417-page beneficial ownership file 3 separate times, marking everything legal would need to present the Kang Min-ho connection as the foundation of the filing rather than a footnote. She called the lead partner at the corporate governance firm, and they went through every page together on the phone for 40 minutes. Not because she did not understand it, but because she needed it to be so airtight that Choi Kyung-won's legal team would look at it and understand in the first 60 seconds that there was no version of this that ended well for him. She was on her 4th document review when Mr. Park knocked. Chairman Lee. He stepped in. Daewon Group's legal team confirmed. They are ready to file at 9. The other 2 companies confirmed 7 minutes ago. A pause. And Chairman, Choi Kyung-won's communications team released a statement at 8:30. He is alleging that the 4-company coalition is engaged in coordinated market manipulation and that the Financial Supervisory Service investigation is politically motivated. Another pause. It is already on Business Pulse. Serafina did not look up from the document. Send our communications team his statement. Tell them no response today. Not one word. The filing speaks. She turned a page. What time is it? 8:42, Chairman Lee. 18 minutes. She closed the document, looked at the Han River. The sun was fully up now, the water bright and moving and completely indifferent to everything being decided on the 42nd floor above it. Is everything sealed? Yes. Chairman Lee. The filing documents are encrypted. The legal team is standing by. The FSS contact confirmed the receiving window is open from 9 to 9:30. She nodded once. The elevator doors opened at 7:52, and Ji-hye walked out in a sharp camel coat, dark trousers, her dark hair pulled back cleanly, 2 Americanos in her hands, and the expression of a woman who has shown up for every significant moment in her person's life for 6 years, without once needing to be asked twice. She walked directly to the desk and placed 1 Americano in front of Serafina without saying anything. She sat in the chair at the side of the desk and crossed her legs and picked up her own cup. They did not speak for 6 minutes. They did not need to. At 8:58, Serafina picked up the phone and called the lead partner at the corporate governance firm. 1 sentence? We are ready. At 9:01, the simultaneous filing landed. Jin Young Group, Daewon Group, 2 additional companies, 4 separate civil actions filed at the exact same moment with the Financial Supervisory Service and the Korea Fair Trade Commission. Combined documentation covering 3 years of coordinated corporate interference, a 4-layer beneficial ownership structure traced all the way to Choi Kyung-won and below him to Kang Min-ho, and an $11 billion damages claim that the legal team had described in the formal language of the filing as conservative. Mr. Park stood at the door watching the confirmation come through on his tablet. His expression did not change. It never changed. But Serafina had learned 7 years ago to read the specific quality of his stillness. And this was the stillness of a man watching something he has believed in finally arrive at its correct conclusion. He bowed. Not the standard professional bow, the deep one. By 10:30, the Financial Supervisory Service had publicly confirmed the investigation was open. Ji-hye reached across the desk and put her hand over Serafina's hand for exactly 3 seconds. Then she removed it, picked up her Americano, looked at the Han River through the glass. "It's done," Ji-hye said. Simply, completely. It was. By 11, Choi Kyung-won's personal legal team had gone quiet. No more statements, no more press releases, the digital silence of lawyers who have just read the opposition's filing and understood the full size of what they are looking at. By noon, 2 government advisory panel members whose names appeared in the beneficial ownership documentation had quietly resigned their positions, citing personal reasons. By 2 in the afternoon, the Business Pulse Korea newsletter had run 3 special bulletins, and an international wire service had picked up the story for New York, London, and Hong Kong. And then the 48-hour happened. The press found Kang Min-ho's name in the filing documents at 3 in the afternoon. And when they found it, they did not just report what he had done. They reported who had appointed him. They reported that a senior board member, who had been enabled and elevated by Chairman Lee Adeyemi herself, had been the primary internal source for a 3-year operation designed to dismantle her company from the inside. They used words like judgment and vetting and oversight. They used the careful language of people who are not accusing directly, but are building a question in the public mind and leaving it there to breathe. By 4 in the afternoon, 3 institutional investors had called Mr. Park requesting clarity on the board appointment process. By 5 in the afternoon, a business publication had run an editorial that used the phrase leadership accountability twice, without ever mentioning her name directly, which was somehow worse than if they had mentioned it. Serafina read every word. She did not read it the way a person reads something they are trying to survive. She read it the way a doctor reads a diagnosis, with the full professional attention of someone who understands that accurate information, no matter how uncomfortable, is always more useful than comfortable ignorance. She read the editorial that questioned her judgment. She read the anonymous forum posts from people in her industry who had been waiting 6 years for a crack in the wall and were now pressing their faces against it. She read the careful diplomatic language of the institutional investor, queries that said accountability without ever saying failure, and meant both. She let all of it land. She did not deflect it. She did not manage it down or construct a narrative around it that made it feel smaller than it was. Kang Min-ho had sat in her boardroom for 7 years because she had put him there. She had read 7 years of calculated performance as genuine loyalty, and she had been wrong. That wrongness had a cost. Not to her company, not to her governance, not to any decision she had made or any strategy she had executed, but to the specific part of her that still believed that precision and care and full attention to the people around her was sufficient protection against betrayal. It was not always sufficient. She sat with that for a long time without softening it. Then she thought about the $11 billion filing sitting in the FSS inbox. She thought about Choi Kyung-won's legal team going silent before noon. She thought about the 4 companies who had stood together at 9 in the morning with documentation so complete and so airtight that the opposing narrative had collapsed before it could gain footing. She thought about the 42nd floor she had built from nothing at 29 years old when the industry had looked at her and decided she would be temporary. And she was still here, still on that floor, still standing. She had been wrong about one person. She had built something that survived it. Both of those things were true, simultaneously, and she was going to hold both of them without letting either one erase the other. She closed the laptop at 5:47 in the evening. She looked at the river for exactly 90 seconds. Then she called Mr. Park. Prepare a board statement for Monday morning. I want full transparency on the Kang Min-ho appointment review, timeline, process, everything. No managed language, just the facts and what we are doing about it. She paused. Jin-young Group does not hide from its own record, not even the parts that hurt. Yes, Chairman Lee. She hung up. She was still there when it happened. At 6:14 in the evening, her personal line rang. Not a familiar number, not Seo, not Ji-hai. A number she did not recognize, a Gangnam prefix, a small independent development company's main line. She almost did not answer. She answered. Chairman Lee. The voice was Mr. Park's, but Mr. Park calling from an external line, which meant he was calling with something that had come through a channel that was not internal. I received an anonymous document delivery 30 minutes ago through our external legal Dropbox. No name attached, no message, just a document. A pause. It is a contract record, K&D Ventures, from 14 months ago. It shows a direct financial connection between a Kang Min-ho consulting entity and the original K&D Ventures acquisition brief that Hana Capital was using as their entry point. Another pause. Chairman Lee, this document is the missing link that connects Kang Min-ho directly to Project Orchid's origination. Not just the execution, the beginning. His voice was completely even, but she heard the quality underneath it. Whoever sent this knew exactly what we needed and sent it anonymously. It is clean. It is dated. It is irrefutable. If this holds in the legal review, it changes the filing scope significantly. Serafina sat very still at her desk. She knew who sent it. She did not know how he had found it, but she knew who sent it because she knew the kind of gesture made by someone who has decided that the right thing and the convenient thing are not the same thing and has chosen the right thing at the direct expense of the convenient thing. The document had come through the external Dropbox with no name and no message and no request for anything in return, and there was only one person in her life right now who was capable of that specific combination of qualities. Finding something real, saying nothing about it, asking for nothing back. She thought about a man writing a note on heavy cream paper for 12 minutes and leaving it on a counter with his half of the divorce papers signed and her half blank and a single line beneath a photograph. Whenever you are ready, or never. Both are completely yours. She looked at the Han River. The sun was going down over Seoul now, the water catching the last of the light, the city beginning its nightly transition from the gray of work into the blazing amber of evening. Serafina sat at the 42nd floor and watched the city shift and felt something shift inside her too. Not dramatically, not with the performance of a woman arriving at a decision. Just the quiet, precise settling of a woman who has been carrying the full weight of a complete picture for 24 hours and has finally decided what to do with it. She picked up her phone. She called Ji-hai. I know about the document, Ji-hai said immediately. She had already heard. She always already heard. He sent it anonymously. No name, no message, no leverage. I know. He found the missing link between Kang Min-ho and Project Orchid's origination. He could have called me directly. He could have used it as a reason to call. He chose not to. I know that too, Ji-hai said. Her voice was careful in the way it was careful when she was deciding how much to say and how much to leave for Serafina to arrive at alone. A long pause on the line. Ji Hye. Make the reservation at your restaurant. Private room. Tonight, 9 o'clock. A pause. For two. Ji Hye was quiet for a moment. Then she said something she had not said in 6 weeks. Not once. Not even on the nights when she had wanted to. She had been waiting because she understood that some things could only be said when the person you were saying them to had arrived at the place where they could receive them completely. Okay, Fia, Ji Hye said. Okay. And then, because she was Ji Hye, she added, I'm making the jjigae myself, not the kitchen staff. Me. Serafina almost smiled. I know, she said. She hung up. Her phone rang before she could set it down. Chairman Seo. She answered. It is finished, he said. You built something real. Simply. Directly. The way he said everything. With the weight of a man who does not speak unless the thing he is about to say is worth the speaking. 7 years of someone trying to take it from the inside, and it is still standing. That is not luck. That is architecture. She looked at the Han River through the glass. A pause. With that said, Seo continued, I made a request some weeks ago, to ask again when it was finished. Another pause. I am asking. Serafina was quiet for a moment. Chairman Seo. Her voice was direct. No management, no softening, no performance. Just honesty because he had earned honesty, and she was not going to give him anything less. I appreciate everything you have done. I mean that completely and without qualification. But I need to be honest with you. I am not available, not tonight, not in that way. SEO was quiet for a long moment. I know, he said finally. Something in his voice, not hurt, not managed, simply honest. I have known since the parking lot. A beat. He is a better man than he was. That is rare. A final pause. Take care of yourself, Chairman Lee. He hung up first. With dignity. Completely. She sat at the desk for one more minute. The last of the day was burning off the water, and Seoul was swallowing the light and replacing it with its own. She had built something real on this floor above it all, and someone had spent 3 years trying to take it from the inside, and had failed, and she was still here. She stood up. She picked up her black blazer from the back of the chair. She walked to the elevator. Mr. Park was at his desk as she passed. He stood immediately. Chairman Lee, will you need the car? Yes. Tell the driver 9 o'clock, Ji Hye's restaurant in Cheongdam. He looked at her for a second. Yes, Chairman Lee, he said. And then, quietly, barely audible, more to himself than to her. Good. She rode the elevator down. Daniel Kim found out about the anonymous document at 6:43 in the evening through a call from Jae-won. He was at the Dongtan construction site, still in his work boots. The crew had gone home, the machinery still, the half-finished structure standing in the early evening light like something in the process of becoming what it was always supposed to be. He had been walking the east section alone for 30 minutes, not thinking about Serafina, not thinking about the filing, not thinking about the parking lot or the Hanukkah window or the unsent text he had finally deleted because some things needed to be released rather than preserved. He had been thinking about the foundation, the repoured section in the northeast corner that his site manager had flagged 3 weeks ago and that Daniel had come back to check twice after the repair, because showing up once to approve something was not the same as knowing it was right. That was the difference. He understood that now in his body, the way you understand things, that you have had to learn through loss rather than through instruction. Showing up once was easy. Showing up the second time when no one was watching and nothing required it, that was the thing. That was what it actually meant to pay attention. He listened to Jae-won's call, heard the words anonymous document and missing link and filing supplements and said nothing for a long time. Hyung, Jae-won said carefully. Did you know what was in that document when you sent it? I knew what it was. I did not know if it was enough. It was enough. It was the missing piece. A pause. She is going to know it was you. I know. Does that change anything for you? Daniel looked at the half-finished structure in the fading light. He thought about what it meant to build something, to pour the foundation correctly and frame it honestly, and come back the second time to verify the work, not because anyone required it, but because the building deserved it. He thought about 4 years of receiving warmth without crediting its source. He thought about what it cost to send a document with no name on it. Not the finding of it, not the understanding of what it was, but the specific, deliberate choice to attach nothing to it. No signature, no message, no door left open for a response. Just the thing itself placed where it needed to be placed. Because it was the right thing, and that was the only reason that mattered. There was a version of himself 6 months ago who could not have made that choice. That version of Daniel Kim would have sent the document with a note attached, would have made it mean something about him, would have used it as a bridge back in rather than simply as the right thing to do. He was not that man anymore. He did not know yet what that meant for everything else, but he knew it was real. No, he said, it does not change anything. Jae-won was quiet for a moment. Okay, Hyung, he said, the voice of a younger brother who has watched his older brother become someone he respects. Simple. Complete. Daniel hung up. He stood on the Dongtan site for a while longer, in the early evening quiet with the half-finished building beside him, and the Seoul skyline visible in the distance beginning to light up for the night. Then he drove back to the city. He did not go to Jae-won's office. He did not go to the Hanam-dong apartment. He went to his own place in Mapo. The small, clean apartment with the good pan and the cooking class notes still on the counter and the photograph of the 7th rice attempt on his phone that he had never deleted because it was the first time the color had been exactly right. He made rice. Not for anyone. Just rice. The practice itself. The daily act of paying complete attention to something that mattered. He was standing at the stove when his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Serafina. Not a message. Not a photograph. Not a carefully composed text, written and deleted and rewritten for 6 weeks. Her name, calling. He answered on the second ring. Serafina. Daniel C. Her voice. Not cold, not managed, not the Chairman Lee register she used for the world. The other one. The one that lived underneath. The one he had heard exactly 4 times in 4 years and had not been paying enough attention to recognize for what it was until it was almost gone. I received the document. He said nothing. You sent it anonymously. No name, no message. Still he said nothing. Why? Not accusingly. The genuine question of a woman who already knows the answer and needs to hear him say it in his own words. He looked at the pan on the stove. The rice at the right heat. The color starting to come. Because it was the right thing to do. Not a gesture. Not a way back in. Just the right thing. A pause on the line. He could hear Seoul through her window. The same city from a different floor. The same evening settling over both of them simultaneously. Come to Ji Hye's restaurant, Cheongdam, private room, 9 o'clock. His hand on the pan handle went completely still. Serafina, knock when you arrive. She will let you in. She hung up. He stood in the Mapo kitchen for a long moment with the pan on the stove and the rice at the right heat and the city outside his window and something in his chest, doing the kind of thing it did when you have been carrying something heavy for 6 weeks and someone has just shifted enough of the weight from one side that you can finally breathe all the way in. He turned off the stove. He went to get changed. Jihee's restaurant in Cheongdam had 3 Michelin stars and a private room in the back that seated 8 and had been used for exactly the occasions and that required privacy, warmth, and the kind of food that communicated care more precisely than any available language. Jihee had cooked the jjigae herself, the fermented, layered version her mother had taught her, slow and patient and completely impossible to rush. The kind of dish that was an act of love disguised as dinner. She set the table herself. Two place settings. Low, warm lighting. The sound of Soul completely absent behind the thick walls. She was in the kitchen when Serafina arrived at 8:53 in her black pantsuit, hair pulled back, no makeup. The same way she had walked into the 42nd floor at 6 in the morning because Chairman Lee still did not need armor today. She had needed clarity this morning, and she needed something else tonight, and she knew what it was, and she was not going to perform around it. Jihee came out of the kitchen when she heard her come in. She looked at Serafina for a moment, at the black pantsuit and the pulled-back hair and the face that was completely unguarded in the way it was only unguarded in this specific restaurant, in this specific private room with this specific person, and she said nothing. She simply put both hands briefly on Serafina's shoulders and looked at her directly, and then said, "The jjigae is perfect tonight, Fia. I timed it to land exactly when you need it," and went back to the kitchen. Serafina sat down. She sat in the quiet of the private room and looked at the two-place settings and the low, warm light and let the full weight of the day move through her without managing it. The folder on the desk at 6 in the morning. Kang Min-ho's name. The filing at 9:01. Jihee's hand on hers for 3 seconds. The 48-hour of public questioning. The editorial she had read with full attention and put down without flinching. The anonymous document arriving through the Dropbox at 6:14. SEO's voice saying, "Take care of yourself, Chairman Lee," and hanging up with complete dignity. Mr. Park saying, "Good," in the corridor when he thought she could not hear him. All of it, one day. The longest and most complete day of a 7-year tenure on the 42nd floor. She was still here. At 9:02, a knock at the private room door. Jihee opened it from the kitchen corridor without coming out. Daniel stepped in. He was in a clean, dark suit, not the slightly loose one from the parking lot nights, and the J1 office floors, a different one. Properly fitted. The suit of a man who has lost and rebuilt and arrived somewhere real on the other side of it. His dark brown-black hair neatly styled. His lean, athletic frame upright. His sharp, defined jawline and high Korean cheekbones and dark, intense eyes finding her immediately across the small, warm, private room. He looked at her. She looked at him. Neither of them said anything for a moment. There was a quality to the silence. Not the heavy silence of 6 weeks of distance, not the managed silence of two people being careful around each other. Something lighter than that, something that had been cleared out to make room for whatever was going to be said next. He sat down across from her. Jihee appeared from the kitchen and set 2 stone pots of jjigae on the table, still bubbling at the edges. She looked at Daniel once, the look of a woman who has been protecting her person for 6 years and is conducting a final assessment. And then she looked at Serafina, and Serafina gave her the smallest possible nod, and Jihee went back to the kitchen and closed the door. Daniel looked at the jjigae, then at Serafina. "You cooked kimchi fried rice when you were stressed. Every time. I thought it was just a habit." A pause. "It was not just a habit." "No, my grandmother taught me. Lagos. I was 9. She said the best cooking is the cooking you do when you are not performing for anyone." She looked at the jjigae. "I cooked it when I needed to remember who I was before any of this." He was quiet for a moment. "I did not know that. I lived with you for 4 years, and I did not know that." "You did not ask." "No. Simply. Completely. No defense, no explanation. Just the clean acknowledgement of a man who has accepted the full weight of something and is not going to put it down or ask someone else to carry it." "I did not ask." The jjigae bubbled between them. The private room was warm. Seoul was somewhere outside the thick walls, going on at full speed the way it always did, building, running, relentless. And inside this room, there were 2 people sitting across a small table from each other with 6 weeks of distance between them and 4 years of history underneath that, and something new and uncertain and genuine beginning to occupy the space where both of those things had been. Neither of them rushed it. That itself was different. The old version of this, The version that had existed in the Hanamdong apartment for 4 years would have rushed past the discomfort toward resolution, toward the next thing, toward the comfortable surface of a shared evening. This was not that. This was two people sitting inside a moment and letting it be exactly what it was without managing it toward a conclusion. Serafina reached into the inside pocket of her black blazer. She placed a folded document on the table between them. The paper was warm from her blazer, not the divorce papers. He looked at it, really looked, read the header, and his expression changed. Not dramatically. The quiet change of someone receiving something they were not expecting, and understanding the full meaning of it in the same moment. It was a Jinyoung Group co-development contract, K&D Ventures as the partnering entity. Completely legitimate terms, not charity, not management. A genuine business arrangement between two equals on the basis of work that stood entirely on its own merit. I had legal review your Dongtan restructuring plan. Not recently, 8 weeks ago, before any of this, before the lobby. She looked at him directly. It was good work. Genuinely, independently good work. I was going to bring it to you through Mr. Park as a standard partnership inquiry. A pause. Then the lobby happened and I put it in the left drawer with everything else. He looked at the document, then at her. This has nothing to do with us. Nothing. You earned it before you wrote the note, before the parking lot, before the anonymous document. The work was good before any of that existed, and it will still be good regardless of what happens with everything else. She held his gaze. Sign it or do not sign it on its own terms. It is not connected to anything personal. He looked at the contract for a long time. She watched him read it, actually read it, every clause, the way a man reads something he intends to understand, rather than simply accept. That was new. 4 years ago, he would have scanned the surface and nodded. Then he looked up. And the other thing, the drawer. The divorce papers are still there, both halves unsigned. She picked up her spoon. I am not making that decision tonight. He was quiet. But you called me. Yes. Why? She set the spoon down. She looked at him across the small warm table with the bubbling jjigae between them and the thick walls keeping Seoul outside, and 6 weeks of everything sitting in the room around them like furniture that was finally in the right arrangement. Because you found the missing piece of my case. And you sent it with no name on it, and no message and no request for anything in return. And I have had a lot of people in my life who moved without thinking about what they were handing me. She held his gaze. And I wanted to look at the man who finally thought about it. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved through his expression. Not relief, not triumph, not the performed gratitude of a man who has been given what he wanted. Something quieter than all of that. The specific settling of a person who has done the right thing for the right reason and is now sitting inside the reality of what that costs and what it returns, and finding that the accounting is honest in a way that earlier versions of himself were not capable of. Then he picked up his spoon. He tasted the jjigae. His expression shifted. The involuntary shift of someone tasting something that is exactly what it is supposed to be. It is incredible. Jihai made it herself. I know. She let me in. And for the first time in 6 weeks, in the warm private back room of a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Cheongdam, while Seoul blazed outside the thick walls and the jjigae bubbled between them, and somewhere on the 42nd floor of Jinyoung Group Tower, the financial world was still absorbing the full size of what had happened today. Serafina Lee Adeyemi smiled. Not Chairman Lee, not the woman on the Forbes sidebar and the Business Pulse newsletter and every major financial outlet in 6 countries. Fee, just Fee. The woman from Lagos who had learned to make kimchi fried rice at 23 because she loved a man and wanted to understand his world and had never stopped cooking it even after he stopped seeing her because the cooking was never really about him anyway. It was always about remembering who she was when no one was watching. She was that woman now. She had always been that woman. Across the table, Daniel Kim looked at her smile and said nothing. He did not need to. He was paying complete attention, finally, completely, in the way that could not be faked and could not be performed and could not be learned from a cooking class in Mapo or a note on cream paper or an anonymous document sent through an external legal Dropbox. In the way that simply was, because he had finally understood that this was what love actually asked of a person. Not the grand gesture, not the signing, not the parking lots and the unsent texts and the seventh bowl of rice. Just this, fully present, fully here, asking nothing and receiving everything. Ji-hai appeared from the kitchen doorway. She looked at the two of them across the small table, the jjigae half-eaten, the contract sitting between them unsigned for now, the drawer still closed with both halves blank, soul going on outside, everything uncertain and everything real. And she made the sound she made when something had landed exactly right. Not a word. Just the warm sound of Park Ji-hai being entirely satisfied with how something had turned out. She went back to the kitchen. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Serafina. 3 words. Jjigae is perfect. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The Han River moved outside the city the way it always moved. Patient. Indifferent. Carrying everything downstream without keeping any of it. Seoul built and ran and blazed in every direction at full speed the way it always had and always would. 10 million people all in the middle of their own story simultaneously, all of it happening at once, relentless and alive, and completely unconcerned with any single 42nd floor. On that floor, the desk was empty. The monitor was off. The left drawer was closed with both halves of the divorce papers still blank and unsigned inside it, beside a folded cream note and a sealed white envelope, all of it sitting in the dark together the way unfinished things sit when they are waiting not to be decided, but to be understood. The understanding was coming. Not tonight. Not yet. But the architecture of it was already there. The quiet structure of 2 people who have been through the full size of something together and have come out the other side of it not unscathed, but not destroyed either. Changed. Rebuilt in the places that needed rebuilding. Honest in the ways that matter. Present in the way that cannot be performed. Chairman Lee would be back at that desk at 6 in the morning. The jjigae would be a memory. The contract would be signed or not signed on its own terms. The drawer would be opened when the picture was complete and not before. And the city would keep moving, and the river would keep running, and the 42 floors would still be hers. Built from nothing, defended against everything, still standing. She had never been ordinary. She had simply been unseen. Not anymore. And that, besties, is the end of the story. Drop a comment telling me the exact moment that got you. Like, share, and subscribe for more K-Mafia romance stories. Ready for the next story? Comment new story. See you next time, besties.